10 Spine-chilling cryptid encounters in Kentucky, forbidden tales of terrifying beasts exposed. Jessica stumbled through another sleepless night, her worn-out heart racing as she clutched her two little ones close. In the shadows of their dilapidated house, every creak of the old boards whispered her nightmares. The Kentucky Hoot Owl, a creature said to haunt the dark woods at the edge of their property, lurking hungrily for souls like hers. The very thought sent chills down her spine, as the tale had claimed the trust of terrified children, stolen whispered secrets of innocence, and had even turned the adults of the town into wary glances and hushed whispers. Yet, here she was, wrestling with exhaustion while bills piled up, the weight of her world growing heavier by the day. Late shifts at the local diner were the only thing tethering her to any hope, but even that felt like a thrilling ride straight into despair. The hoot owl's eerie howls echoed beyond her window at night, winding their way into her thoughts, tightening around her mind like a vice. The children often woke from nightmares, eyes wide as saucers, and she could only hold them close, promising they were safe. But word had spread. Her neighbors no longer offered the warm smiles they used to. Now, they whispered behind their hands, glancing toward her home with fear and suspicion, as if she was somehow tainted by the presence of the beast. One late evening, a shamefully bright moon hung in the sky like an ominous eye. Laughter floated from outside as her young son, Timmy, slipped out to play beneath its glow. A mother's heart stirred with warmth for a fleeting moment, until silence swept back in like a cold tide. It was as if the world held its breath. Jessica's heart staggered. What had happened? Panic surged. Timmy! She called out, her voice quivering. The darkness, thick and overwhelming, wrapped around her like a shroud. With every desperate step, she felt the menacing eyes of the woods glaring back, shadows darting just beyond her sight. Her neighbors' lights flickered dimly, as if they, too, were unwilling to fetch help. Why did no one care? Jessica's voice trembled as she searched for her boy, and that shared warmth dissolved into terror. Hours slipped away like grains of sand, time growing heavier and darker. Cold sweat trickled down her back as she felt the oppressive weight of the woods pressing in around her. The authorities arrived only to roll their eyes, dismissing her cries as mere hysteria, feeding into the malicious whispers echoing in her mind. They believed she'd summoned this creature somehow. Her heart broke at their judgment, leaving her to face this nightmare without aid. Just as her hopes began to wane, the sun barely broke the horizon, casting a dim light through the trees. She stumbled upon something that cracked open a door into the town's chilling history, a respected elder tied to the cryptid's lore, a figure once revered for protecting lives, now a forgotten ghost lurking in the shadows. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. The forest seemed alive now, echoes of Timmy's laughter swirling around her like a malevolent wind. Could it really be him? Or was it something far more sinister, beckoning her to venture deeper into shadows that threatened to swallow her whole? Stepping into the woods, Jessica clutched her breath, each crack of a twig resonating with grave danger. Would she rescue her son, or had he already been claimed by the Kentucky Hoot Owl? A palpable presence loomed, the air crackled with tension. As night fell, again, those haunted trees whispered secrets, and Jessica knew she was teetering on the edge of something dreadful. The familiar laughter echoed again, twisting like a knife in her heart as cold shadows edged closer, whispering promises of terror. Was it really Timmy? Would she dare to go deeper, as the night's dread crept closer? With a trembling heart, Jessica took another cautious step deeper into the woods. The ground beneath her shoes squelched as if it was alive, merging with the tension woven in the whispering branches above. Shadows shifted restlessly, taunting her as she strained to listen for anything familiar amidst the cacophony of darkness. What if Timmy was lost and frightened? Or worse, what if the hoot owl had snatched him from her grasp? The laughter rang out again, clear yet distorted. It felt like a hollow echo of their shared moments, a cruel mimicry that sent icy fingers crawling up her spine. Timmy! She cried again, desperation pulling at her voice. The woods responded with cruel silence, as though even they conspired to keep her from the truth. Minutes felt like agonizing hours in this labyrinth of whispers and dread. Every rustle, every flutter of leaves, spun her into panic. Was that a creature lurking just beyond her vision? She quickened her pace but remained rooted in place, turning abruptly toward a movement in the shadows. There it was. A fleeting glimpse of white feathers shimmering just at the edge of her field of vision. Her breath hitched. This could not be happening. But then, she heard it, the flapping of wings, wide and daunting. The sound was heavy, stirring the air about her with a force that sent her heart rioting in her chest. For a moment, the world around fell silent, as though the very air paused to watch, holding its breath alongside her. And there it was, the hoot owl. Enormous and grotesque, its golden eyes glimmered with a terrible hunger, scanning the air like a predator. A shiver ran down her spine, not just from fear but from the bone-deep certainty that it was aware of her, the tremor of her heartbeat, the shallow breaths beneath her terrified facade. Timmy! Her voice broke, desperation lacing her plea as she stepped back instinctively. The creature seemed unfazed, its gaze raking across the expanse of the woods before fixing back on her, extending a massive wing and screeching with an otherworldly howl that made her ears ring. It was an ominous warning, a challenge that sent waves of terror crashing over her. Suddenly, the laughter broke through once more, deceptively innocent, echoing from deeper still, "Mommy." It was unmistakably Timmy's voice, it had to be. Hope and fear collided in her chest, igniting her resolve. "I'm coming, sweetheart," she shouted, darting in the direction of the sound. With each frantic step, the trees seemed to shift menacingly, reaching out with gnarled branches as if to ensnare her. The shadows swirled, and she could hear the hoot owl gliding soundlessly overhead, eyes fixed on her, ever watching, ever waiting. The woods trembled around her with an unspeakable dread, clawing away at her sanity. "Mommy!" The call rang out again, growing fainter. Was she getting closer, or was she just spinning in circles like a moth drawn to an inevitable flame? She broke through the thicket, and there, at the edge of a clearing, Timmy sat. His small frame was still, a silhouette against the haunting landscape. "Timmy!" The scream burst from her lips, a desperate lifeline cast into the abyss. But as she rushed forward, the shadows shifted again, the laughter fading, replaced now by a low growl, rumbling beneath the surface like thunder. It was then she realized this wasn't just the hoot owl, it was a gathering darkness. Other eyes were watching, lurking, waiting in the crooks and bends of the canopy, hungry for the vulnerable. Just as she reached for her son, the woods erupted in chaos. Figures darted through the trees, dark shapes emerging like demons birthed from the earth's terrified core. Jessica froze, dread pooling in her stomach. Could she save Timmy, or was the very land they called home now conspiring against her, determined to snatch away everything she held dear? With her heart thrumming in her ears, she knew she had to make a choice. Would she fight the growing encroachment of this nightmare or turn back, leaving the shadows to claim her son? As terror crashed in a wave, she steeled herself for what was to come. The hoot owl screeched once more, an assertion of dominance, summoning the darkness to gather. The forest stood at a precipice of dread, and before her lay a decisive moment, to confront the horror or surrender to the depths of despair. What awaited her in the heart of the shadows? Would she confront the terrible legacy that hung over her family, or was retreat the only hope for survival? The ground trembled beneath Jessica's feet as an unsettling hush fell over the clearing. Her heart hammered against her ribcage, stunned by the relentless weight of looming dread. The darkness shifted like a breathing entity, writhing as shadows converged around her. "Timmy!" she cried again, her voice cracking under the strain of anguish. He remained motionless, his silhouette swallowed by the ominous forest, as if it sought to claim him entirely body and soul. Then she saw them. Eyes. Dozens of them, twinkling maliciously amid the underbrush, reflecting the faintest light that struggled to penetrate the murky gloom. A sinister choir, each gaze imbued with unfathomable hunger, as if they waited for her to falter and become part of the forest's grotesque tapestry. "Stay back!" Jessica shouted, her voice desperate, trembling. Knowing she needed to reach Timmy before the woods entangled him forever. Yet with every frantic step, her surroundings grew darker, as if the trees themselves were closing in, conspiring against her. The growl rose again, this time a deep, resonating noise that vibrated through her bones. It sounded like a predator issuing a warning, a dark promise of the fate that awaited them. Behind her, the hoot owl perched, its enormous wings stretching wide. The very air seemed to flicker in surprise at its presence, dread swirling through the forest like a storm. Jessica blinked back tears of fear, focusing all her strength on Timmy. "Timmy, come to me." She extended her hand, trembling, desperate to bridge the distance that yawned like an insatiable abyss between them. For a moment, she thought she saw movement. The outline of her son shifted, but he did not get up. Instead, laughter horrific and perverted rippled through the trees, reverberating in her mind like a twisted melody. "Mommy!" It echoed, layered with layers of torment that made her stomach churn. The ground buckled. Panic surged through her limbs. "No!" She screamed as roots twisted and coiled, wrapping around her ankles like viney serpents, pulling her down. She staggered but refused to let go. With every ounce of will left in her, even as the hollows of the woods laughed around her, she clawed towards him. Timmy's eyes met hers, wide and shimmering with innocence, disconnected from the horror surrounding them. But as she drew closer, the darkness receded for just a heartbeat, revealing more than just her son. In the flickering light, Jessica saw the hidden figures lurking beyond the trees, gnarled forms twisted in the shadows, eyes dark and lips curled with malevolence. Her heart raced as she realized she was no longer alone in this fight. Each creature, ghostly and angular, seemed to stretch and twist their limbs hypnotically, their lips parted to whisper incoherently amongst themselves, as if they were debating who would claim Timmy first. "Let him go!" she cried, the raw desperation igniting a flame inside her. With a feral snarl, she charged ahead, determined to break through the hold of the shadows. Every step shook the earth, a battle cry forged of maternal love and instinctual fury. Suddenly, an eruption roared from above. The hoot owl took flight, its wings casting a pall over her, blinding her, thrumming with the dark promise of fear. It swooped low, aiming not just for her, but for Timmy. "No!" Jessica screamed, ignoring the branches clawing at her skin, adrenaline fueling her fight. She lunged forward, reaching for Timmy, but the shadows surged, clamoring to drag her back. Would she be consumed by this darkness, or could she tear her son from its grasp? The world tilted in a chilling whirlwind as the growls escalated, rising to a fever pitch, a cacophony that thundered in her ears. And then everything stilled, like the woods were holding their breath. In that moment of suspended horror, the weight of impending doom crushed down. She could either embrace the darkness or break free from its clutches. As she strained toward Timmy, she felt the cold breath of the forest whisper against her neck. What price would she pay for love? The reality of her choice loomed larger, and she knew the shadows themselves were waiting to see if she had enough of a fight left in her. What horrific fate awaited them if she failed? Would the woods take everything she held dear, or could she unleash beyond this dread? The air crackled with dread, and in that pivotal breath, she knew the true battle was about to begin. With a howl that echoed through the trees, the silence shattered. Jessica's heart plunged as the shadows flickered and swelled, as though the very darkness were alive, hungry for her fear. She could feel its icy essence creeping through her skin, urging her to submit, urging her to falter. "Timmy!" She screamed again, desperation clawing at her throat as she pushed through the thorns that dragged at her arms. She could see him there, a luminescent target in the shimmering night, but the road to him was laced with obstacles. The gnarled forms of the creatures twisted around her, their laughter mingling with the growl of the hoot owl, rising into a dissonant symphony that mocked her progress. They were closing in, eyes glowing brighter, their intentions clear. She could imagine them reaching out with elongated fingers, eager to wrap around her boy, snatching him away into the mire of shadows from which there was no return. Jessica's breath hitched, and with a sharp intake, she lunged forward, tearing her leg from the grasp of a ropey vine. The air thickened, pressing down like a vice. Jessica felt each step weigh her down, the pull of the forest conspired to hold her in place. She felt their gaze on her, not just on Timmy, but on her, an unexpected morsel that dared to challenge their intent. "I will not lose him," she howled, forcing her legs to move, her vision narrowing to a tunnel of ferocious determination. Yet, just as she found her footing, the ground erupted around her. A mass of roots twisted in a violent dance, rising like serpents spitting venom. They grabbed at her ankles, swirling, clawing at her resolve. Jessica gasped, jerking back. The air now crackled with a palpable tension that threatened to slice through her sanity. "Mommy!" Timmy called again, but this time, his voice was distorted, echoing through a cavernous void. It didn't sound right. Was that the sound of her son? A sickening unease churned in her stomach. These woods were stealing his voice. They were stealing him. She tore her gaze from the growing shadows, steeped in uncertainty, and gritted her teeth. "Not my son." The words erupted from her like a fiery comet. The darkness seemed to retreat, not far but enough for Jessica to seize on the moment. With a wild push of adrenaline, she barreled forward, reaching for Timmy's small, outstretched hand. Her fingers brushed against his, the brief spark of warmth igniting a flame of hope that surged through her. Suddenly, the world jolted. The hoot owl came crashing down, wings whirling violently, plunging the forest deeper into chaos. Jessica shielded her eyes, the onslaught of wind nearly knocking her off balance. Behind her, the laughter escalated, the creatures screeching with delight at the unfolding chaos, relishing in the sheer terror that flooded the air like thick fog. They were a storm, an avalanche of darkness and malice, and Jessica trembled, caught between onslaught and her desperate desire to protect her son. "Timmy!" She cried again, pulling him toward her even as the shadows made their final grasp, clawed hands reaching out from every direction. She could feel the forest's breath on her back, the chill creeping into her bones, but she pushed the fear deep inside her heart, willing it to melt away under the heat of her fury. Just as the shadows loomed, ready to snatch everything from her, she forced a defiant yell into the night. "I will fight you." But at that moment, the darkness surged, a tidal wave of despair that crashed on top of her. She was engulfed, blackness swallowing her whole, spiraling down into the very depths of terror as the creatures screeched and Timmy's hand slipped from hers. In the depths of the swirling night, she felt something shift within her, a decision trembling on the edge of possibility. Would she truly embrace the dark? Or find the strength to fight through it? As the forest quaked around her, an echo rang out, a sinister promise that she wasn't ready for. Would she confront her fate or let the darkness consume her? The choice was more than her life, it was an abyss echoing Timmy's name, a test of love against despair, building toward an unimaginable climax. And in that crushing void, the hardest part lay ahead. Would she prevail against the very essence of evil, or would the forest laugh in triumph, leaving nothing behind but whispers and shadows? The darkness pressed against Jessica like a suffocating blanket, her heart hammering in her chest as she fought to regain her composure. Panic clawed at her throat, but she couldn't allow despair to swallow her whole. Anger surged through her veins, igniting a fierce determination. "Timmy!" she shouted, voice cracking as if her own sound was shattering against the clamoring noise of the forest. Shadows twisted and danced around her, taunting her as they pulled at the edges of her sanity. Gritting her teeth, she focused on the flickering light of her son, a fragile beacon shimmering in the crushing blackness. She had to get to him. It was now or never. As the shadows swirled, she pushed through the writhing tendrils of darkness, feeling them brush past her skin like icy fingers hoping to snatch her away. Come on, come on. She muttered under her breath, her feet pounding against the forest floor, which felt more like quicksand than solid ground. Each step was laborious, but she had taken one more stride into this turmoil. Another howl erupted through the night, sending chills racing up her spine. Was it the hoot owl again? Or something worse? She dared not look behind, fearing the sight would paralyze her. With every ounce of willpower, she pushed forward, her eyes fixed on Timmy. Stay with me, baby. I'm coming. She felt the air shift, thick with the intoxicating stench of decay. It clawed at her nose, triggering the nausea that bubbled beneath the surface. The laughter of the creatures echoed in her ears, mocking her efforts, surrounded by sound, yet achingly alone. The shadows didn't just want her son. They wanted her fractured soul. Just a few more steps. Just a little closer. When she reached for Timmy, her fingers grasped only air. No. No. Panic widened her eyes, and she stumbled, almost collapsing beneath the weight of dread that threatened to crush her. She had been so close. Then, through the roiling blackness, she heard it again, the distorted voice of Timmy calling for her, now a haunting whisper. Mommy Jessica's blood rushed in her ears as she spun, searching for that light she once saw, yearning for her son. The shadows around her shifted and coiled like serpents, and she realized this was their game. They stitched lies into the very fabric of this forest, twisting her reality. With a surge of ferocity, she thrust herself forward, yelling, "I will find you." The darkness seemed to tremble, vibrating in response to her fierce declaration. The laughter intensified, but it was different now, almost frenzied, as though they were afraid of her resolve. Each flicker of doubt inside her ignited the fire of her fight. She wouldn't allow them to take him, to strip away her love for him, not now. The roots and vines shimmied away from her path, as if retreating in fear. Then, suddenly, a figure emerged among the shadows, something tall and bent, a grotesque parody of a human shape. Its eyes glowed like dying embers, and as it stepped forward, the darkness seemed to part around it. Jessica froze, heart pounding like a drum. Was this a trick? Or was it an ally? Mommy, the voice was clearer now, but it still dripped with an unnatural echo, twisting her heart in its grasp. Timmy. She gasped, desperate for any affirmation. As she pushed through, the figure melted back into the shadows with a menacing chuckle, leaving her dreadfully alone again. Time was slipping. The creatures could sense her weakening resolve, could smell her fear like blood in the water. She squared her shoulders, nerves prickling. I'm not afraid of you. But the next heartbeat brought unyielding silence, thick as the air before a storm, and it bore a heavy weight. She could feel the eyes of the unseen crowded around her, hungry. Just then, a rustle erupted from ahead, and a new sound intruded, a slithering, dragging noise, like something ancient awakening and crawling toward her with intentions unspoken. What now? She whispered, dread pooling in her stomach. Then, from the gloom, an outline appeared, a looming, gnarled figure that smelled of death and despair. Jessica's breath caught, frozen between frantic escape and the fight that had kept her moving. And as the thing drew closer, its intentions twisted and malicious, she realized the haunting truth. The forest was alive, and it craved to take her as much as her son. Would the depths of this malevolent darkness yield a way for her to save Timmy, or had she stepped too deep into a realm where hope was just a fading whisper? Jessica's pulse thundered in her ears as the gnarled figure edged closer, its form a grotesque distortion of shadows and pain. The stench of rot seeped into her lungs, making each breath feel like a burden. Timmy! She cried again, louder this time, desperation cracking her voice, echoing into the night. The thing halted, tensing as if it had been summoned by her plea. A deep, rattling sound burst forth from its throat, a shriek that twisted her stomach into knots. It was neither a howl nor a scream, but something primal, a sound forged in the depths of the darkest nightmares. Then, just as quickly as it had come, the creature vanished back into the night. Jessica blinked, the shadows swirling in its wake, a fog of horror dragging her deeper into a panic. Had it taken her son? She continued forward, churning through dread, arms outstretched. Her knees quaked beneath her, but she refused to back down. This forest wanted to engulf her, but she was still here. Yet, with every rush of adrenaline came a sharp stab of dread, the suffocating weight of despair inching closer. Suddenly, amidst the oppressive silence, came that voice again, soft, desperate, a haunting echo that carved its way through the murky gloom. "Mommy, help Timmy!" she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. "Mommy!" The voice shimmered through the air, a flicker of hope that ignited her heart. It seemed to come from every direction, yet she couldn't pinpoint its source. Her gaze darted around, frantically scanning the impenetrable darkness. It swallowed the faint moonlight like a predator, devouring all semblance of safety. With unspeakable determination, Jessica plunged ahead, ignoring the chill that threatened to freeze her limbs solid. The laughter from the unseen creatures echoed again, but it transformed into something different. Were they celebrating her futile attempts? "Leave me alone!" she yelled, voice cutting through the laughter like a knife, a challenge thrown into the abyss. The shadows paused. For a split second, she felt an eerie stillness descend, as if the forest itself was holding its breath. Then, from the darkness, the laughter twisted into something more sinister, almost mocking. "Mommy," her son called again, further into the darkness, the innocence in that single word amplifying the horror in her heart. She leapt forward, the cloying underbrush clawing at her legs as she moved. As she fought her way through, thick vines wrapped around her ankles, trying to pull her down. She stumbled, falling to her knees, fury doubling her resolve. "No!" she gasped. The surge of adrenaline was intoxicating, a rush that filled her with fire, and she ripped at the vines, tearing them apart with frantic energy. Up ahead, she glimpsed flickering shadows again, glimmers of light that danced like fireflies. "Timmy! I'm coming!" she shouted, clawing her way forward. "Mommy!" His voice was closer now, wrapped in despair and fear, yet seeping through the shadows. Each syllable felt like a lifeline tugging her ever closer to her son. Then, all at once, the air erupted not in sound, but in sensations. The world shifted as if the shadows could actually breathe, and in that moment, she sensed a presence behind her. Something large and foreboding, feeling hungry, lingering. She turned her head slowly, breath hitching in her throat, and what she saw sent ice coursing through her veins. The gnarled figure loomed behind her, eyes like red suns glaring with malice. Timmy's call faded, swallowed by the impending dread as the creature advanced, its claws glinting in the dim light. "Mommy," it echoed, each word throbbing, a sick parody of her child's voice. Terror rooted her in place, and she reached for the warmth she always found in her son, now lost to her. In that single heartbeat, Jessica realized if she was to save Timmy, she had to confront this darkness. "Get away from my son!" she screamed, defiant, their eyes locking in primal dance of fear and fury. Then a rumble shook the forest floor as roots coiled around her again, this time tighter, more vicious. With everything in her, she pulled against the bindings, shouting, "Timmy, I'm here!" A thundering roar erupted from the shadows, and a flash of red light struck through the darkness, illuminating threads of fate that tightened around them all. Her, Timmy, the grotesque creature. What twisted fate awaited her in this living nightmare? Would she emerge a mother triumphant, or be consumed by the forest that yearned for her despair? The roots tightened around Jessica's legs, each twist sending jagged pain through her body. Fear gripped her heart as she fought to breathe. Her voice broke again, fractured but steady. "Timmy! Hold on!" A shiver coursed through her as she sensed the creature inching closer, its breath a rancid haze on the back of her neck. "Mommy!" The word echoed, but now it was mixed with something else, a sobbing wail that pierced through every shadow. The sound sliced through her, beckoning her deeper into the darkness, shoving aside all thoughts of retreat. She struggled, her hands clawing at the rough bark. The roots felt alive, writhing, pulling, seeking a way to drag her down. "No. I want to let you take him," she screamed, adrenaline mingling with madness in her veins. Every muscle in her body protested, but she pushed, ferocity replacing fear. And then silence. The night held its breath, and she realized that the creature had stopped. Her heart raced, pounding hard against her chest as she glanced over her shoulder. It was no longer looming. Instead, it stood still, its gaze locked onto something invisible, cocking its head like a dog trying to understand a strange sound. "Timmy," the name whispered through the trees again, urging her onward. It was a siren call so fragile yet so haunting she had to answer. Summoning every ounce of strength, Jessica tore away from the roots binding her. The forest seemed to recoil from her defiance, and she stumbled forward, chaotic breathing turning into frantic gasps. The darkness hung densely around her, but she felt a warmth ahead. Flickers of light danced, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and reach, offering a promise against the malevolence. "I'm coming," she called, feeling emboldened. "Just keep talking to me." Suddenly, the shrieking laughter erupted again, a cacophony echoing from behind the trees. The creature growled low, the vibrations traveling through the ground. It was no longer just watching her, it sensed her determination, her heart racing with maternal instinct. Then, a sharp pain shot through her leg as something cold and clammy wrapped around her ankle. She looked down to see a tendril, black and glistening as if it were a part of the shadows. It pulled her closer to the earth, the forest floor biting into her palms. With a surge of defiance, she kicked hard, feeling the tendril loosen. "You want to take me?" she screamed. A surge of blinding light erupted from her memory, the image of her son's laughter igniting a flame inside her. She was not just fighting a creature. She was fighting for him. Jessica lunged forward, her hands clawing desperately at the ground until she found a sharp-edged stone. Gripping it tightly, she whirled around and slashed at the tendril. It recoiled with an unnatural hiss. The forest seemed to wail, filled with sorrow and rage. And then the world shifted. The creature surged at her, a black shadow tangled with raw fury and hunger. Its eyes glowed like burning coals, each movement a terrifying ballet that danced just beyond her comprehension. "Timmy!" she called again, panic surging through her. But there was no answer. The laughter faded, absorbed back into the night, replaced by an eerie stillness that promised danger. Dread coiled around her throat as she faced the creature again, defiance hardening into a plan. She could see it now, a flicker of something in the darkness that wasn't just void. If she could reach it, perhaps she could find her son. Perhaps she could pull him back from the abyss. The gnarled creature lunged, its claws thrusting toward her, closing the distance with heart-stopping speed. Jessica's instincts kicked in. She ducked, rolling to the side, stone still clenched in her fist. But as she struggled, something vibrated beneath her, a heartbeat. The forest was alive in more ways than she understood, and she could sense the shadows shifting, hierarchies of terror coiling around her. The question weighed heavily: how could she fight something that was not just a creature, but a living fear, the embodiment of every nightmare she ever tried to bury? As Jessica pushed back against the darkness, she knew one thing she had to break through. She had to find Timmy before it was too late. The forest was closing in, and she could feel time slipping away. But just before she could gather her thoughts, a whisper right beside her, piercing through the air, a familiar voice, laden with terror, echoed so close. "Help me!" It was Timmy. Could she muster the courage one last time to confront whatever darkness lay ahead? The whisper sent a chill racing along Jessica's spine. "Timmy," she breathed, hope intertwining with urgency. Where was he? Panic surged anew, and she forced herself to focus. Every instinct screamed at her to run deeper into the darkness, but she had to remain steady. The roots writhed at her ankles, and with each passing moment, they felt stronger. She yanked her legs free, wincing at the pain biting into her flesh. "Hold on, baby. I'm coming." She shouted into the suffocating blackness. Ahead, a faint glow flickered between the trees. Jessica clung to that light, desperate to ignore the pounding of her heart and the shadows that closed in around her like a noose. She darted toward the glow, her breath quickening, feet pounding against the leaf-strewn ground. The laughter echoed again, a twisted mockery of joy. It taunted her, swirling around like smoke, blurring her vision. "Mommy!" His voice was strangled with fear, drawing her closer. She had to push through. The creature had become a wounded animal, wounded by her defiance. It was no longer just watching, it was angry. The shadows around her twisted unnaturally, writhing with a life of their own, dragging at her every step as if the earth itself conspired against her. Every heartbeat brought a rush of dread. "Don't let it win," she murmured to herself, gripping the stone tighter, the edges cutting into her palm. She wouldn't fail now. She couldn't. Suddenly, a flash of movement caught her eye. A figure darted between the trees, too quick to be anything but a wretched apparition. "Timmy!" She cried again, urgency spiking. She leaped forward, feet barely touching the ground, breaking through the thickening vines that tried to bind her. "Mommy!" His cry was clearer now, not lost in the horrific laughter, not drowned by the primal growls of the beast stalking her. Jessica burst through a small clearing, light pooling softly around her, a sanctuary amidst the chaos. But it wasn't as safe as it felt. The air crackled with malevolence, and the shadows twisted in grotesque ways. Timmy stood in the heart of it, his wide eyes reflecting pure terror. "No!" She gasped, the sight of him yanked her heart down into a dark pit. The creature loomed behind him, monstrous and ghastly, its jagged mouth stretching into a smirk that sent bile rising in her throat. Timmy was trapped in its embrace, caught in the throes of its darkness. "Timmy! Run!" She screamed, forcing her legs to move again. She dashed toward him, her own terror igniting a fierce heat inside her. For her son, she would face whatever horror lay ahead. Just as she reached the edge of the clearing, the creature lunged, jaws wide, a midnight abyss seeking to devour her whole. With a primal roar, it soared through the space between them, and for a second, the world slowed. "No!" The scream tore from her throat, echoing like the cries of the damned. Jessica dove to the ground, the nightmare skimming past her. The impact shook the earth as its claws raked the air, narrowly missing her. She scrambled back to her feet, eyes wild. Time was slipping, the shadows around her danced erratically, and she could feel the forest tightening its grip. "Mommy, please!" Timmy's voice quivered, filled with despair. He was losing hope, and that was the last thread she could not afford to let go. "Hold on!" She shouted, adrenaline surging anew. "I'm coming!" But the forest hummed with a sinister energy, the creature now circling them like a hawk. The glow began to fade, despair creeping back into her heart. "Stay with me, baby. I need you." Her mind raced at how to save them both, but every path ahead felt blocked by darkness. Behind her, the terrible growl broke the air, reverberating in the clearing like thunder. Jessica turned, dread pooling in her gut. The creature was regrouping, preparing for another strike. What could she do against this living nightmare? The floor trembled as it moved closer, determination flickering in its blood-red eyes. With a surge of ferocity, Jessica raised the stone, ready to confront the malevolence that threatened to tear her family apart. But in the depths of the creature's eyes, she glimpsed something chillingly familiar, something that made her blood run cold. The shadows were waking, the forest was alive. And then, just before she could strike, a sudden scream shattered the tension. Timmy's voice crying out in pure terror. As darkness closed in, the question loomed, would she reach him in time, or would the night claim them both? The creature's growl clawed at the air, tearing through the thick silence like a serrated knife. Jessica felt the hairs on the back of her neck rise, a primal instinct urging her to flee. But how could she leave Timmy? It was then that a chilling realization hit her: she was being toyed with. The creature was enjoying the hunt. "Timmy!" she shouted again, her voice cracking, both a plea and a challenge. She stood firm, stone in hand, heart racing like a drum in a frenzied parade. The shadows thickened, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were whispering secrets she dared not overhear. The ground under her felt alive, pulsating with each growl from the creature. Time was running out, and the vestiges of light were fading fast. Jerked by an unseen force, her body rushed forward, propelled by the desperate need to save her son. "Mommy!" came Timmy's shrill cry, piercing through her resolve like a dagger. The creature was closing in, dark wings unfurling behind it, the air chilling with unspeakable dread. "Timmy!" She lunged for him as the creature lunged for her, two forces colliding in a nightmare of silhouettes and screams. Just as she grasped the edge of his shirt, the beast swiped at her with claws that could rip through wood like paper. Jessica felt a rush of air as the claws skimmed past her, barely missing her shoulder, sending her spiraling into the earth. The foliage enveloped her, branches clawing at her limbs, as the creature shifted its focus back to Timmy. The boy stood frozen, eyes wide with horror as he saw his mother struggles against the ground. "Get away from him!" Jessica roared, channeling every ounce of her fear into that moment. She hurled the stone toward the creature, aiming for its haunting eyes, but her aim faltered. The stone whizzed past, clattering uselessly against the roots below. The creature, infuriated, turned its gaze toward her, malice radiating from its shadowy form. Its smirk grew broader, revealing rows of jagged teeth glistening in the diminishing light. "You think you can save him?" it rasped, voice low and dripping with venom. "Hope is a fragile thing, isn't it?" "Shut up!" Jessica snapped, trembling with rage. She had to act. Her eyes darted around for anything, any weapon, any advantage. In that dark moment, she noticed the shadows climbing up a nearby tree, twisting and coiling like serpents. Something was shifting, morphing behind the beast. Was it a mistake to fight? Would the shadows betray her if she showed weakness? "Timmy, listen to me." "You have to." The beast exploded with laughter, a cacophony of shrieks and howls. "He knows the truth, dear mother. You're only prolonging the inevitable." As if sensing her weakness, the forest vibrated with anticipation. Trees flexed and groaned, their roots shifting like lethargic giants waking from a deep slumber. The shadows seemed to draw energy from Jessica's fear, swirling dangerously close. "Run!" she yelled again, desperate to pierce through the haze of terror suffocating them. But in that very moment, she saw it, a tangled mass of living roots and vines slithering towards Timmy, reaching for him, drawn into the conflict. "Get back!" Jessica screamed, racing toward the oncoming tendrils. She could hear the rustling, sensed their hunger. Timmy, eyes locked on his mother, hesitated. The creature was between them now, an obsidian wall blocking his escape. Finally, it lunged backward, edging toward Timmy. If she didn't act now, she would lose him forever. In her heart, another pulse of courage sparked. "Timmy!" Jessica cried out as she charged forward. She had to try some way, any way, to break the spell of fear and save him. But just as she reached for him, the darkness swallowed her scream. The world spun, darkness enveloping her, and the shadows erupted in shrieks of twisted laughter. What was real? What was illusion? The question whispered through her mind as the creature lunged again, closer, and closer, a shadow poised to engulf her. Would Jessica find the strength to cut through the darkness, or would she succumb to the chaos of the night? As her vision faded into black, a new dread began to coil within her. What lay ahead could be worse than this nightmare. The darkness swallowed Jessica like a beast, the world swirling into a chaotic web of shadows and shuddering whispers. It felt like drowning, as if the forest itself was laughing, feeding on her despair. But inside her, a fire still flickered, refusing to be extinguished. Timmy's voice echoed, a spectral wail cut through the fog. "Mommy!" It raced through her heart, reigniting a fierce desire, to fight, to surge forward, to save her son from the depths of this nightmare. No! She screamed defiantly, words bursting from her like a crack of thunder. I want to let you take him. With a surge of adrenaline, Jessica pushed against the constricting shadows, finally reclaiming her feet. She felt the heart of the forest shift as she lumbered through its clutches. The tendrils that sought to ensnare her recoiled, sensing the change, sensing the will that coursed through her veins. Timmy. She summoned every ounce of strength she had. She focused on his tiny form, the brightness of his laugh that had once filled their home, and barreled forward. The creature lunged, claws gashing the air with a bone-chilling roar, but this time Jessica stood firm, her vision narrowed to a point that was solely Timmy. Stay away from him. She bellowed, the words echoing like a rallying cry. She could feel the dark energies wavering, uncertainty flickering in the growl of the hoot owl, who seemed to hesitate. Mommy, I'm scared. Timmy sobbed, a wave of sorrow crashing down over her. She drew closer, swallowing the fear, clinging on to the fragment of hope that tethered them. She had come too far, faced too much to back down now. Using the stone she picked up earlier, she threw it at the creature, this time channeling her rage. It struck true, hitting the hoot owl square in its glowing eyes. A shriek tore through the night, a cry of pain mixed with fury that resonated deep in Jessica's chest. The creature staggered back, momentarily stunned, shadows recoiling into the dark recesses of the forest. Run, Timmy. Now. Her voice thundered across the space between them, finally breaking through the haze of fear that had paralyzed them both. Timmy took off, bolting toward her like a fragile torch flame racing against the night. The ground trembled beneath his tiny feet, and for a moment, the shadows hung back, as if fearful of the light he brought with him. But the hoot owl wasn't finished. With a flurry of furious wings, it propelled itself at her, an embodiment of terror determined to reclaim what it believed was rightfully its. Jessica could feel the air shift, hear the ominous flaps closing in, drowning the light around them. Timmy! She yelled, lunging forward to intercept. But in that moment, the creature swooped down, claws gnarled and hungry. With surprising speed, Jessica hurled her remaining stone. It struck the creature with all the strength of a mother fueled by love. The impact knocked it off balance, wings flapping wildly. Jessica seized the moment, diving towards Timmy just as the creature regained its footing. Timmy! Grab my hand! She called out, reaching desperately. She felt the briefest touch of his small fingers grasp hers, the warmth igniting every fiber of her being with renewed hope. But they weren't in the clear yet. The forest convulsed with rage, roots surging to grab hold of them again. Sweat trickled down her brow as she pulled Timmy close. Hold tight! She shouted over the cacophony of dark laughter that hissed in warning from every direction. Together, they bolted through the clearing, skipping over twisting roots and thorns. Just beyond lay the maze of trees, but ahead was the shimmering beam of moonlight, their escape, a path carved through the nightmare. As the hoot owl raged behind them, Jessica held on to Timmy with an iron grip, pushing forward as the oppressive aura of the forest nipped at their heels. We're almost there. Keep running. Every muscle in her body burned, each step a plea to the universe to just let them reach the edge of those uncanny woods. The moonlight loomed closer, glimmering like an ethereal promise of safety. Just then, a great rush of air swept above, stirring the ground restless as the creature swooped once again, its monstrous shape casting a dark shadow over them. Jessica yelled, her heart pounding as she broke through the tree line, pulling Timmy with her into the soft grass beyond. The air was different here, clean, fresh, and for a moment, she felt the tight shackles of fear release their grip. But the hoot owl's monstrous howl echoed in rage from deep within the forest, but farther now. Its grasp was lessening. They stumbled forward at last, panting, pushing the weight of their fears behind them. As they reached the edge of their property, Jessica wheeled around, heart racing. And there stood the woods, a twisted, ominous facade of shadows and creeping dread. The sounds of the hoot owl faded away, retreating into the depths of darkness. But Jessica knew they had broken free. Timmy was safe. He clung to her waist, trembling but alive. "Mommy, did we win?" he whispered, peering up at her with wide eyes. She knelt to his level, cupping his face with trembling hands, relief flooding every corner of her heavy heart. "Yes, baby. We did. We're safe now." In that moment, the weight of the past lifted, the horrors of the night fading to distant whispers in her mind. They were together, and that was all that mattered. Holding him close, she felt the warmth ebbing into every crevice of her soul. This night was an ending in itself. They would never return to those woods, never look back. The legacy of shadows would remain shackled within the trees, and as dawn began its ascent, she felt the sun's first light painting the horizon with hues of hope. With a kiss to Timmy's forehead, Jessica turned them back toward home. A quiet home, a home free from haunting memories, where laughter would dance once more. As they walked away from the darkness together, she knew they had faced terror, but they had conquered it, entwined in love, a bond stronger than any creature that lurked in the shadows. Remember this moment of strength, she reminded herself, for they were survivors. There was nothing in this world more powerful than a mother's love striving to protect her child. Now, step boldly into your own dawn. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash that like button now to feed the algorithm. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. Instantly share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. It's the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.